I'm pretty excited to share for you guys. Probably about a month ago, Pastor Chris put it to me, and I would be lying if I said I wasn't extremely nervous and I guess apprehensive about this opportunity. But we heard some great messages last week about doubt, and we also framed it around how community is so important for doubt. And I kind of settled tonight on the fact that I'm not an expert. I don't do much public speaking, so we'll see how this goes. It's the first for all of us. So. But what I do have is a faith journey. And I'm not that old, I'm 27, but I do have grey hairs now, as of this week, so there you go. So I kind of settled on the fact that, you know what, like, maybe what I've got tonight is for someone, and I really think that it is for someone. Because I've been through some things, and I've walked through some things, and I've seen the goodness of God through that. And so what I'm going to bring tonight is the goodness of God. And if at any point it doesn't sound like that, then maybe it's just the wrong thing, and just don't put that down in your notes, please. All right, and I'm sure that Pastor Chris will tell me about it later, and that is all okay. Now, I'm an Instagram guy. All right, I know we all have our favorite aspect of social media. All right, some people are Facebook, Instagram. I think Snapchat is still a thing. Is that still a thing? I know like 2 people that use it, but apparently it's still a thing. What else? Twitter. I'm a big Twitter guy too. But Instagram is my preferred method of social media. I try and stay off it, but it doesn't always happen that well. And I love a good reel, and I like to scroll through my reels. And lately my reels have been consumed with these challenges where basically the more followers you have, like the more you have to do something, right? So there is some pretty interesting ones out there, and lately there has been one where a guy is digging a hole to fill with gasoline to just like set on fire. Like he's just at 1 million followers, which is a pretty big hole and a lot of gasoline, right? So I don't really know what his plan is or how that's going to turn out for him, but I can only assume not well. But these did start from a good place, right? I remember the first few like reels you'd watch about it. They were essentially like trying to actually fundraise for something or do a challenge with purpose for something. And I remember very early on, one of the first ones I saw was this guy who would do a cold plunge, and for however many followers he'd have, with like how long he'd do it for. So it got to the point where he was in there for a while. Now, I had this great concept. I was like, oh, sweet, I'm going to preach tonight. That story came to me. I'm going to do a cold plunge. Can I be honest with you? I got in the shower and had it on cold, and I was in there for 2 seconds. And I bailed. I was like, this is not for me. I'm a hot shower guy. So I did not do the cold plunge, and I have no idea what the experience is like. But I have it on good word that what the experience is like is not pleasant initially. The first few seconds, very rough. You lose your breath. You're like shivering. Your body's like sorting itself out. But there obviously is a point to it. And everyone says that, you know, after a while, 5-10 minutes, you get out and you actually feel pretty good. Like your body is restored. The muscles, they don't ache as much. Everything's just sitting a little bit nicer. Yeah? So I think the thing is, when you do a cold plunge, there's a moment before you step in where you know it's going to hurt, but you know that the end result's going to be pretty good. It's going to be worth it, right? And I think that we all have moments in life where we have to take a plunge. And a lot of the time, what taking a plunge looks like stepping into an opportunity. All right, and I think that's something we can all relate to. But the thing with taking a plunge, particularly when it's opportunity, is we have a lot of prior experience, right? Maybe it's something that you've done before and you've failed. And you see it come up again and you're like, I don't know if that's going to be for me. Maybe it's something that you've just been too slow to react to. The opportunity presented itself, but you just didn't seize it. You sat there for a little bit, you watched it go by, and now it's gone. Maybe the opportunity was one that you never even bothered trying to take a plunge towards. And that was simply because of the fact that you just didn't think you're worth what was on the other side. Sometimes you look down at what is there, the opportunity, and you just go, actually, you know what? I don't think I deserve that because of who I am. And what I am isn't good enough for that. And I actually might prosper in what's on the other side. And I don't deserve that. And I think that the reason behind all of that kind of inactiveness towards opportunity, and the moment where we don't just want to take the plunge, is because there's something in all of us that's just missing. And it makes us think that we don't deserve it. And whether or not it's because we've fallen apart and then we've lost that piece of us, or whether or not it's because we've seen other people go through it and then we get scared. But it's our incompleteness that stops us from going forward. And I know for me, that's always been the biggest hurdle to overcome. I see something come by and I just go, actually, you know what? That's not for me because I don't deserve that. What I've done, who I've been, means that I'm not good enough to actually be able to step into that. And so I don't. And then it goes past. And then you sit and you feel sorry for yourself because you're like, oh, geez, that would have been a great opportunity. And then you see someone else do it and then they prosper. You're like, oh man, wish that was me. But I have some incredibly good news because this has been going on for a long time. We are not the first people to experience this. It's been thousands of years, and so much so that it's in the Bible. Nice segue, Josh. Good start. How are you all doing? I worked on that one for a long while. Peter. You ever read like a Bible story and you're like, dang, I feel real called out? That's me when I read Peter. Like, Peter relates to me on like a strong level because when I insert myself into that story, I'm just like, yeah, okay, I get it now. It all kind of makes sense. So, Peter quite literally took a plunge. He was someone who had maybe done some things that were not so great in terms of what he said. He decided it was a good idea to deny Jesus 3 times. And he clearly felt the weight of that. We've been on the journey to Pentecost since Easter. And in that journey, Jesus rose 2 times. Jesus appeared 2 times to the disciples. And then the 3rd time brings us to the Sea of Galilee. And we have Peter. He's out in the water in his boat. And Jesus is standing on the shoreline. So I'm just going to read a little bit of scripture. Is that okay? Can we read some scripture? When I say a little bit, it's actually a little bit long. But yeah, we'll be right. We'll get through it. So John 21, verse 4. At dawn, Jesus was standing on the beach, but the disciples couldn't see who he was. He called out, "Fellows, have you caught any fish?" "No," they replied. Side note, Jesus definitely knew they didn't have any fish, and he just wanted to rub it in their face, which is brutal. Verse 6, then he said, "Throw out your net on the right-hand side of the boat, and you'll get some." So they did, and they couldn't haul in the net because there were so many fish in it. Then the disciple Jesus loved said to Peter, "It's the Lord." When Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his tunic, for he had stripped for work, jumped into the water, and headed to shore. The others stayed with the boat and pulled the loaded net to the shore, for they were only about 100 yards from the shore. When they got there, they found breakfast waiting for them, fish cooking over a charcoal fire, and some bread. "Bring some of the fish you've just caught," Jesus said. So Simon Peter went aboard and dragged the net to the shore. There was 153 large fish, and yet the net hadn't torn. "Now come and have some breakfast," Jesus said. None of the disciples dared to ask him, "Who are you?" They knew it was the Lord. Then Jesus served them the bread and the fish. This was the 3rd time Jesus had appeared to his disciples since he had been raised from the dead. After breakfast, Jesus asked Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" "Yes, Lord," Peter replied. "You know I love you." "Then feed my lambs," Jesus told him. Jesus repeated the question, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" "Yes, Lord," Peter said. "You know I love you." "Then take care of my sheep," Jesus said. A third time he asked him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was hurt that Jesus asked the question a third time. He said, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." Jesus said, "Then feed my sheep." Sam Lucas said to look at him if I was ever nervous, and he'd smile, and I looked at him and he was yawning halfway through that. So I'm really sorry if that was a bit of a slog, but we got there. So there's some observations we can draw from this. I think the first thing that we can look at is the fact that Peter was back to fishing. So Peter, before Jesus called him to be a disciple, that was his day-to-day. He was out there fishing on the seas, doing his thing. He denied Jesus 3 times, and he never had the chance before Jesus was crucified to have any reconciliation. There's a guy that's just kind of sat there with that weight, and he's just gone, "You know what? Maybe it's just back to fishing for me. Maybe what I've done, the words I've said aren't redeemable, and the only thing for me is just to go back to the fishing." So we see him, he's out in the sea, doing his thing, obviously not very well because he needed help. And he sees Jesus. He sees Jesus, and his first instinct, once he realizes it's him, once the miracle's performed, he actually sees it's Jesus, he puts on his vest and he dives in the water. I think the thing here is it's like, I love that he had no agenda. I love that he just sees Jesus, doubles down by putting this cloak on. Like, you think about how heavy that would be. Like, they're not these lightweight Kathmandu jackets. Like, these are some thick wool bad boys. Like, this is heavy. He dives in and he just starts swimming towards Jesus. Like, is that just not the most beautiful picture? Or is that like just me? Like, it's like, I don't think there's any agenda there. I don't think that he sees Jesus and he's like, "Oh yeah, chance for reconciliation." He's already seen Jesus 2 times. Like, that could have been it. I think that he maybe even thought that was gone. Like that this was just, but he's just so excited that he just wants to go after him. And I think there was a bit of a reason that Jesus was standing on the shore. This is a guy that's already walked on water. Like, he could just get up and walk. But he didn't. He wanted Peter to come to him. And the reason I think behind that is that Jesus is the one who lives like us to live passively. There's got to be an action behind what we do. And that's exactly what Peter demonstrated. Peter dives in, swims over, they bring the boat in, they're eating. Top tip, obviously, is never do anything on an empty stomach. So always have your breakfast first. And then, obviously, Peter finally gets this little bit of alone time. And once again, I still don't think there's any agenda there, hey. I think that Peter's just like, sweet, I've just got some time with Jesus. And he finally gets restoration. After denying Jesus 3 times, Jesus kind of confirms in him 3 times. Now, restoration, not Urban Dictionary. Dictionary definition, because who doesn't love that, is the action of returning something to a former place or condition. So Jesus restores Peter back to his former place or condition. But Jesus doesn't just do that. He also makes it clear that what Peter needs to do next. So he doesn't just stand there and go, yeah, nah, all good, mate. You're restored. He then actually also gives me a little bit more. You know I love you, then feed my lambs. You know I love you, then take care of my sheep. You know I love you, then feed my sheep. It's not just stopping at restoration. He adds more to it. So, here's some thoughts based on a little bit of my own faith journey too. I believe that we can kind of learn from Peter and his restoration. So, actually, I'm gonna have a drink. Sorry, is that all right? Yeah, it's just a water, but my goodness, my mouth is parched. I thought I talked a lot always, but oof. Levi, your mouth must always be dry. Good call. All right, we ready for this? We're like halfway through, and then you guys get to have really good burgers, okay? So, first one is restoration requires a step. Actions are worth 1,000 words. It's really easy to sit there and talk about something and talk about it and talk about, but the minute you have to do it, it's a different story. That was like, I was prepping for tonight and people would be like, how are you feeling? I was like, you know what? Like I'm feeling good to a point, but like all I've got is words on this page. I haven't actually said anything yet. And like, let's be honest, like I could just put the notes up and we could all sit here and read it, but it wouldn't be the funnest thing in the world. So we need to have action. I work at a hospital and I look at hearts. So we do some fun things with hearts and we check them out and make sure that people's are okay. And for 6 months before I started, like basically what we call on the probe, which is like with a patient, we would just read a textbook. And the textbook would have even this like things about like how to manipulate the probe, like how to turn it, get all the different pictures you need, yada, yada, yada. And let me tell you, when I finally picked up a probe with my first patient, I was clueless. Like I read 6 months worth of textbook and it got me absolutely nowhere. So I think this is the same thing with restoration. It can't be a passive process. It's not something that we can just sit and expect to happen. And there's probably a bunch of reasons why, but can I just talk about one? And I think that Jesus doesn't just want us to have restoration, because he will restore us, but he wants us to have long-lasting restoration. He doesn't want us to have like this 2-second thing. He wants us to be able to have it going for ages. All right? And the act of stepping forward and making an active process, I think it requires something in us, and that's actually to humble ourselves. I think if it was passive, we could just sit there and Jesus could be like, I want to restore you, I want to restore you. And we'd just be like, I don't know if I actually need it. Or like, I know there's a few things, but I should be all right. But when we actually have to step forward ourselves, we have to kind of acknowledge and be like, man, there's some things that maybe I've done, some decisions I've made that I need to admit, I need to go forward with and actually bring them to Jesus. And I think when we can humble ourselves and we have that like willingness to kind of acknowledge and not cover up the things we've done, then Jesus can actually work in our hearts so much more. And I think the transformative experience is so much richer because of that. Because he can actually kind of, he can journey with this and really start to transform us, because he's like, sweet, like I know I've got space to get into. Like I know I can start to make some change here. And then we can really start to feel it. And then it's not just something that we've just done and then we have to keep going back and going back and going back to do. It's like, no, now we're actually on a journey of restoration. And we're always kind of going this way. We're always going this way now. I think this was something I learnt the hard way. I was blessed to have grown up in a faith community. But things weren't always super smooth, as life is for none of us. And because of that, I always felt like when anything came up, that I didn't deserve it, that because of the opportunities I'd wasted and not stewarded well, that things that maybe were presented to me weren't for me to step into. Or the things that represented themselves were things that I was like, nah, not this time, because look how I messed it up last time. All right. And so what that meant was I kind of got to the point when I was like 23, 24, and I just was in this constant circle of going back to Jesus, seeking restoration, and just being like, oh, surely something's coming up. Like, surely this time there's going to be restoration. But the problem was, I'd never actually taken an active step. I kind of sat there and expected Jesus, and I wasn't willing to humble myself and actually kind of like do the journey. Because it's not easy, it's tough. Like, this isn't something that's like this. Like, when you step into restoration, that becomes a journey that you go on with Jesus. So, and have to put, like, you don't need to do what I did, because I went to the extreme. But I got to the point one day where I was just like, I can't keep getting stuck in this circle. I can't keep going back to where I was and just ending up in the same place time and time again. And so what happened was, I actually realized that one day Jesus said, Josh, something has to break in you for you to ever get through this. Like, for you to actually be able to step into what I have for you, something's going to have to break first. And literally 2 days after that, life was not great, and it went very downhill very quick. And then 2 weeks later, I got offered a job in Toowoomba. And it was like, I realized that I was like, I need to say yes to this, because me doing that is actually going that, yes, what I've done and what I've tried has never worked. And now it's actually time just to be like, let's put the pride aside. Let's put all the humanity of Josh aside. And let's start maybe journeying with Jesus a little bit and walking forward what maybe he's got in store. So here I am, 2 years later, and geez, I'm glad I said yes. But we can't just settle for restoration. And what I mean by that is restoration is there for a reason. All right? Because what we do is we make these decisions and we burn these opportunities, and God doesn't actually take them away. God isn't like, nah, you can't have that anymore. That's gone. We just kind of create these roadblocks, these self-imposed things where it's like, nah, that's not for us now. And so we don't think we deserve that. So restoration removes the roadblocks, yeah. And then we can start stepping forward into what's there. But what that means is that we actually there has to be a response to restoration. Restoration requires a response. So Jesus, he welcomes us openly, lovingly, he restores us, but then he wants more for us. So it's a bit of a classic, but Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. He wants us to have a life of fullness. And to do that, he doesn't want us just to stand dormant in our restoration, but he actually calls us to continue to take the plunge and step forward into our purpose. Okay? We at the hospital, people get heaps of knee replacements because, I don't know, it's just a hospital that people have to have knee replacements done. And the knee replacements at one, like, and if you're not a graphic person, I apologise, but you might have seen it where it's like they fall like they're hammering like a metal rod into someone's knee. It's hectic. If you like, don't look up a video of it, would be my recommendation. But it's wild. So they like, they're putting this whole new knee in someone, like this 85-year-old. And I kid you not, they get these people up like 2 hours after. And they just start walking them. Like, these people's got full new knee. And they're just like, you'll be right. Get on your feet. Let's like get you going for a walk, stretch things out. Now, they do that because if they sat in bed for too long, their muscles would start to seize up and they'd get stuck. I think there's a temptation when we kind of go through that restoration experience to sit there and just be like, Jesus feels nice. Like, we've just come from someone that's like, I guess feeling the weight of our decisions, feeling the weight of what could have been. And now we're sitting in this like, but Jesus, he's restored me. I feel whole again. And we can just kind of, I guess, dwell on that and just enjoy that. But Jesus doesn't ask us to do that. 3 times he went to Peter. He didn't just like, Jesus, Peter said, I love you. And then he said, once I find my Bible verse so I don't get the Bible wrong, then feed my lambs. Take care of my sheep. Feed my sheep. So he tasked us with action. And I think he does that so that we have that continual restoration. Restoration is there so that we can rediscover the dreams we had. The career, the friendship, the purpose, whatever that looks like. When we're continually moving forward, it stops us from kind of ending up back where we were. All right, so that action is there for a reason, so that we don't also end up having to need that restoration again and again. So we can keep stepping forward and keep finding more and more what Jesus has in store for us. But I also want to acknowledge that sometimes our purpose can be quite cloudy through our restoration. Because sometimes it's just been so long that you think the opportunity is completely gone and that's it. That, like, put it away. It's never coming back. And I think let's not limit God. Like, it doesn't matter how far you think it is. Like, that's not how. Like, it's not too far for God. Like, he's got that within his range. I promise you. But he also gives us really practical ways forward in the interim, in that action commandment. When he's saying, like, feed the lambs, feed the sheep, take care of them, he's just telling us to start with loving people. Like, he's not sitting here being like, you need to now go and worship lead thousands or preach thousands. He's just saying, let's just start with being kind to people. Like, let's just love on the person. Let's care for the person. Because I think we get so caught up in wanting to have this big purpose that we just completely forget the basics. And for me, the reason I kept getting stuck in that restoration, apart from being so passive in it, was that when I get restored, I just bring my focus back to what I thought I should be doing. And what I thought I should be doing was basically things that glorified myself. There were things that, they were for the kingdom. They were to, serve the church. But all they were things that just continually pointed back to me and my own gratification and what I would achieve and be able to pull out of it. And I think what Jesus is saying is, and what transformed my restoration was when I started going, all right, now I'm restored. How's it going to help me get back to what I was doing and make sure that I'm the best Josh I can be? It was just as simply as, I'm not going to go back to there. I don't know where to start, so I'm just going to start loving people. And I'm just going to start trying to impact person time after time. And like, the beauty of that is that we can just start in our day-to-day. Like, we can start that in our mundane. This isn't something that we need to, like, all of a sudden, like, start serving in church and get this role. Like, it just happens. Like, you go to the shop, you go get, not tonight, get a burger here. But next week, you go out after and you just say hello to someone, you just smile. Like, we're just in this world now where people are crying out for Jesus. And that starts with just being kind and just loving. And through that shines a light. And I think it's so important, because when we change our perspective from being inward focused and self-serving and turn that to outward, and how it can help others and how we can put life into others, that's actually when we in return will find life in its fullness. And it's a guarantee that it'll keep coming. Because us as humans, like, when we're kind of always trying to serve ourselves, we're going to make a mistake eventually, because if your own needs and wants are there, like, they're never going to like amount to anything great eventually. Like, welcome to humanity. This is who we are. But when it's an outward focus and you're constantly just trying to look towards others, I don't think you fall down those same traps. I don't think they're there, because it's not this thing where we're just trying to prop ourselves up. There is a reality, which is that we always need restoration too. It's not something that stops, But what we can do is we can hold on to restoration on one part and then step forward and then look for restoration in another part of our lives for the other opportunity that might have disappeared, because we all know that there's so many. But the thing is that Jesus doesn't stop at 3. Like, there's endless opportunity for restoration, and it never finishes. So we can always go back. But man, let's pursue trying to stay forward and keep going forward in it, because that's where we want to be. Like, let's be a community that continues to grow and want more, and not be complacent with staying where we're at. So my encouragement to you would be, take the plunge. Take the plunge into restoration, because Jesus will always deliver. He's always waiting with open arms to piece us back together. But find purpose in that. Step back into the opportunity that was there, the opportunity that you know God had in store for you, and chase after it. But just make sure it's always looking at others. Always filter it through that lens. And that's my encouragement to you. So, we've got 2 questions, and then we can have some burgers. Can you identify a situation in your life that you need Jesus' restoration? I would take the gamble that we've all had something sitting in the back of our heads tonight that we're thinking about. I don't know what that opportunity looks like, but I know it's sitting there. So my encouragement would be, that's a good place to start. That's a situation that you can take to Jesus, and he can restore. You are not too far gone. And my second question is, how will you act in your response to restoration through Jesus? As Christians, we want it to be against our nature to be passive people. We want to be people that are active. It's what we're called to be. So don't waste your restoration. Make it worth something. And make it worth something that adds to this world. Because boy, geez, do we need it. Like, we are crying out for it. So go after it. Don't sit with idle hands.